One night, two policemen were monitoring a mansion, where a high-profile mob boss named Gaetano Cesare was seen having a party. Then another mobster named Billy Rosati, who was also Cesari's business partner, came to see him. Due to a slight misunderstanding between them, Billy and Cesare were involved in an argument and almost triggered bloodshed. Luckily, Billy's right-hand man, Nikki Donatelli, managed to calm down the dispute between them. Billy and Nikki then left Cesari's residence while the Mafia boss took his men to dinner.
The boys, eat up.
Meanwhile outside, a man named Frank Castle infiltrates Cesari's residence and slaughters everyone there, including Cesare himself. Meanwhile, two police officers who were monitoring the situation outside Cesari's residence heard gunshots from inside the house and rushed in to check the situation. A policeman named Saffiati accidentally met Frank, who was just about to leave after killing Cesare and all his men. Saffiati then pointed his gun at Frank. However, after finding out who Frank Castle really was, Saffiati instead let him go and even handed him the keys to his car so he could quickly escape from there. After that, Saffiati punched himself in the nose until he bled and acted as if Frank had hit him when he was about to catch Frank. Saffiati and his partner then called for reinforcements, and when the police arrived at the scene, he made up a story about Frank hitting him and running away after stealing his car. Meanwhile, in another place, three men who are members of the Urban Free Flow gang and Billy's men came to Billy at his headquarters. The three men turn out to be drug couriers who Billy often employs because of their abilities. On the other side, unbeknownst to Billy and his henchmen, Frank had already infiltrated there and killed several of Billy's men who were guarding outside.
The fuck was that?
Check it out, boss.
Frank kills Billy's other henchman and accidentally kills Nikki, who turns out to be an undercover FBI agent. Frank and Billy had a shootout before Billy accidentally fell into a glass-crushing machine that left him hideously disfigured.
Fuck you, man! Fuck you, cancel, you fucking... my fucking face! There he is! FBI, drop your weapon! Oh, shit! Team 2 up the stairs! Team 1 on me! FBI, put your weapons down! A live one! Billy the Butte! Don't move! Not anymore, huh?
Although his face was badly injured, Billy managed to survive. After Frank slaughtered all of Billy's men, he hurried away from there. The next day at Nikki Donatelli's funeral, Paul Budiansky, the FBI male agent who is also Nikki's partner, looks furious at his senior, Agent Miller, who has assigned Nikki on a dangerous mission involving Billy Rosati and his notorious henchmen. However, Miller quipped by saying that he did not anticipate the appearance of Frank Castle, who would kill all of Cesari's henchmen, including Billy Rosati and his men. Paul then meets Nikki's wife, Angela, and promises her that he will catch Frank Castle, the person who killed Nikki. Frank apparently attended Nikki's funeral from a distance and visited the graves of his family who were also there. Frank recalled painful memories of the massacre of his family, which made him very tormented and the reason for all the vigilante actions he had done so far. After that, Paul went to the local police station, where he questioned the incompetent performance of the police in arresting Frank Castle, nicknamed the Punisher, who had always been acting as a vigilante for the past 4 years. There was a heated debate between the police and Paul, before finally, Saffiati suggested that Paul meet a male police officer named Martin Soap who has conducted a series of investigations related to Frank Castle.
Maybe if you feds allowed this lowly cop, all of this could have been a
4 years. This Punisher's you have him once.
Punisher task force,
Martin explains to Paul that Frank was a former Special Forces member who lost his wife and daughter, who were killed by the Mafia. After the death of his family, Frank dedicated his life to fighting crime in his own way and not following anyone's rules because he has a principle that not all criminals get the punishment they deserve, so he will punish them in his own way, which he thinks is very fair.
One day, he takes his wife. They witnessed a mob at Castle, sir. I've shadowed his every step, every murder, all known as so. Since then, he's been taken down. I'm really close.
Meanwhile elsewhere, Frank reveals to one of his henchmen, a man nicknamed Microchip, that he has killed an innocent FBI agent.
I killed an agent in he had a family.
We all make mistakes. You're fighting a war against the ass.
Frank felt very guilty, especially after learning that the man had a wife and daughter who loved him very much. Frank could understand their loss from having experienced something similar. Microchip came there to hand over the weapons and equipment Frank needed. Microchip is a very reliable informant. He tries to comfort Frank, but Frank tells him to leave him alone. On the other hand, Billy gets information from his men about the real identity of Nikki Donatelli, who is an FBI agent. Not only that, they also said that all this time, all the money from drug sales was kept by Nikki. One of Billy's men, a man named Pitsy, said that he knew Nikki's home address and believed that the money was held at Nikki's house. After that, a doctor entered the room and was about to remove the bandage covering Billy's face. But apparently, the doctor was unable to perform surgery on Billy's face because his face looked even more terrifying, causing one of his subordinates, a man named Ink, to vomit. After all, he could not bear to see Billy's ugly face. Pitsy then takes Ink out and scolds him for being presumptuous. When they return to the room, Billy had apparently killed the doctor for failing to perform an operation on his face. On the way, Billy explains his plan to Ink and Pitsy, which is to get his money back and kill Frank Castle.
He's dead. From now on, Jigsaw.
His name is Jane, not Looney Bin Jim.
The scene then switches and shows the atmosphere in a treatment room at a mental hospital, where Jim, Billy's younger brother, is a prisoner there and is treated very rudely by a male nurse. Jim is a psychopath and a murderer who is so vicious that they must restrain him tightly to keep the man from putting up a fight.
What? Dr. Basner.
Not long after, Billy and his men barged in there and immediately freed Jim. Jim looks surprised by the drastic change in his brother's face but thinks it's fantastic because Billy looks even more scary and dangerous with his new appearance. After finally being freed from his bonds, Jim then tortured the nurse who had treated him harshly and then killed him sadistically and brutally.
He's doing just great.
When the four of them entered a hotel, Billy looked very shocked and devastated when he saw his reflection in the mirror. Jim then calms him down and promises to help him kill Frank and take revenge on the man. Jim also smashed all the mirrors there to make Billy feel better. In the evening, Frank comes to Nikki's house to meet Angela. Frank comes there to apologize for killing Nikki and gives Angela some cash as an apology.
Stop, my little girl. Go inside, Grace. You don't get to shoot blood and then stop at the...
It's for your daughter. It's Grace.
I can't find my red pen.
However, Angela instead points a gun at Frank and chases him out of her house. Elsewhere, Billy and his henchmen are seen having a meeting with a drug lord named Christu. One of Christu's men deliberately insulted Billy's face, which made Billy angry and he killed him immediately.
My looks have nothing to do with this.
A fight almost broke out between them, but Christu managed to calm the tension and apologize to Billy. Billy and Christu have finally agreed to carry out a transaction at the dock soon. The next day, Frank meets Microchip at his house and tells him that he will retire as the Punisher and leave town. Microchip then tells Frank that Billy Rosati is still alive and will take revenge on him, so Frank refuses to retire and is determined to kill Billy and his henchmen. Frank then strategizes with Microchip and a man named Carlos who tells him about Billy's henchmen, namely Magenty and the gang, who are about to carry out a robbery. On the other hand, Paul decides to team up with Martin to catch Frank. That night, Frank, who already knew the whereabouts of Magenty and his men, rushed there and slaughtered them. After getting information about Billy, Frank kills Magenty.
Don't kill me.
Sadi. Where is he?
Yep. You don't have any anymore.
But at the same time, Paul and Martin, who were also there, saw Frank's appearance and rushed after him. Frank and Paul got into a fierce fight before Frank finally managed to bring Paul down.
You're under arrest.
But as it turns out, it was all Paul's ploy to catch Frank. Frank then asks Paul to let him go because, at this time, Billy and his henchmen are heading to Angela's house to retrieve the drug sales money that Nikki kept, and Frank must save them. However, Paul didn't care about it and kept handcuffing Frank. Elsewhere, Billy and his henchmen come to Angela's house and imprison her with her daughter.
Money rat, every husband.
Have it, I swear to...
Billy asks about the money from drug sales that Nikki may have kept at his house. But Angela said that she knew absolutely nothing about it. While Billy interrogates Angela, Jim makes a fuss by breaking things in the house intentionally. The commotion was heard by 2 police officers who happened to be patrolling the area. When the police came to Angela's house, Jim brutally killed them both. Angela, who was scared and worried about her daughter's safety, then said that her late husband had a safe in their room and told him the code.
My husband has a safe upstairs in the 10-12-1965.
On the other hand, Paul finally arrived in front of Angela's house, and asked Martin to keep an eye on Frank, who was handcuffed in the back seat while he was about to go inside. After Paul goes inside, Frank then asks Martin to free him because it turns out that Martin is Frank's spy on the police. Inside the house, Ink and Pitsy anticipated Paul's arrival and threatened him not to act rashly if he didn't want Angela and her daughter to be killed. Meanwhile, Billy looks very angry when he finds out that the safe does not contain the money he wants at all. An annoyed Billy then made a fuss, which Jim immediately followed. Hearing this, Pitsy then asked Ink to check upstairs. But then, Frank appeared and immediately beat him.
How you doing?
Paul then took the opportunity to grab his gun and was about to kill Pitsy. But Frank killed him first and rushed to take Angela and her daughter away. When Paul tries to stop Frank, Billy and Jim come down from upstairs and shoot him straight away, so Paul has to dodge their shot and is forced to let Frank go. Billy and Jim were finally caught by Paul and Martin and taken to the police station. Meanwhile, Frank takes Angela and her daughter to their hiding place, where he then gives Angela's daughter some of his daughter's toys to cheer up the little girl. Billy and Jim are taken to FBI headquarters, where Agent Miller offers them both freedom, provided they are willing to help the FBI catch Christou and his gang. Without thinking, Billy and Jim agreed. Billy and Jim then head to the docks to make a deal with Christou, where FBI agents are already preparing to ambush Christou and his gang. Because Billy and Jim had helped Agent Miller catch Christou, they were both finally released.
I recommend life without parole.
Wow. Happy?
Dead. I hope to God he finds you and you get...
Not only that, but Agent Miller also provides information to Billy about Microchip, who is a close friend of Frank Castle. Elsewhere, Carlos tells Frank that Microchip can't see him right now because his mother is sick. Hearing this, Frank asked Carlos to take care of Angela and her daughter while he was going to Microchip's house. However, upon arrival, Frank found Microchip's mother had died in a tragic condition and he did not find Microchip's whereabouts anywhere. Frank rushes back to his hiding place, where he finds Carlos badly injured and dying and realizes that Angela and her daughter have been kidnapped by Jim. Carlos then asked Frank to end his suffering and Frank was forced to shoot him dead.
Don't let me die like this, man. Not like this.
You're gonna be fine.
It's real bad. It's real bad.
Billy and Jim apparently plan to use Microchip, Angela and her daughter as bait to lure Frank in so they can kill him. After that, Frank is seen having a meeting with Paul, where Paul tells him that Billy and Jim have been released. Paul then asks Frank to try Billy and Jim in his own way as they are both above the law. Frank agrees and tells Paul to give up his badge and his job as a federal agent if he wants to help him.
Wants me in exchange for them. I need you to
The law can't touch him, Castle. Total immunity.
No official police procedure. Leave your badge at home.
Meanwhile, Billy and Jim are seen going to a bar, where they will recruit some people and get everything ready to launch their revenge action against Frank Castle.
For good men, and we like to offer you'll be well paid, well armed. So if you're sick of this, raise your armies. We've all suffered at the hands of the Punisher. At the end of it, the Punisher will be dead!
While Frank monitors Billy and Jim's hideout, which is heavily guarded by his heavily armed henchmen, Paul visits Christu's father, Tiberiu. He offers to cooperate to take revenge on Billy, the man who had put Christu in prison. Tiberiu agreed to Paul's offer to cooperate without thinking because he wanted revenge for his son.
Tiberiu, I probably want to find a man.
That night, Tiberiu and several of his chosen henchmen visit Billy's place, pretending to be mercenaries who will help him fight the Punisher. Meanwhile, Angela and her daughter and Microchip were seen being held captive in a room in the building. Tiberiu ordered his henchmen to attack Billy's men when they were inside the building. Gunfights are inevitable.
You don't hear gunfire, girls are not here.
While gun battles were going on downstairs, Frank then entered the building from upstairs and managed to kill some of Billy's men. But then, Frank gets into a fierce fight with Jim and he is quite overwhelmed by Frank, who is a highly trained ex-Special Forces member. Jim then escapes and enters the room where the hostages are being held. Billy, who was in the room, then pointed his gun at Microchip, while Jim pointed the tip of his gun at Angela and her daughter. Frank is faced with two choices, where he must choose between his best friend or Angela and her daughter, who must be saved. Frank finally chose to save Angela and her daughter and gave up the death of his best friend, who was killed by Billy. After killing Jim, Frank then came at Billy in a rage, beat him to death and killed him with a very painful death. After Frank managed to kill Billy and his gang and save Angela and her daughter, Paul asked him to leave immediately because the police would soon come to arrest him. Angela then hugged Frank and said she had forgiven him for his mistake. When Frank and Martin go out together, Martin tries to convince Frank to give up his vigilante status after he manages to kill every criminal in town. However, Martin quickly changed his mind when he was suddenly held up by a mugger, who quickly became a victim of the Punisher.
Give me your fucking wallet, motherfucker.
Frank!
Do I look like I'm fucking kidding?
If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy, hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice just to be sure. You should watch the full movie. Thank you very much for watching.